Regrettably, the college football season is coming to a close, but fortunately, it's closing with a great game. I've been looking forward to this game for a month. Alabama and Notre Dame playing in Miami for it all. The BCS National Championship, two of the most storied programs in all of college football. Notre Dame is a team that comes in here number one in the country and undefeated, yet Alabama, number two, who does have a loss on their resume. Crimson Tide lost to Texas A&M. Alabama is a big favorite in this game, a 9.5-point favorite on BETDAQ. 40.5 the total here. You might notice that total is kind of low, especially for a bowl game. That's because we have two great defenses, the number one and number two scoring defenses in all of college football. Notre Dame leads the nation with 10.3 points per game allowed. Alabama not far behind, 10.7 points per game allowed. So two great defenses, a lot of future NFL talent on both of these defenses. It's the offenses where I think we get some separation here. Alabama's offense clearly better. As a matter of fact, I think Notre Dame's offense sort of a poor man's version of Alabama's offense. What I mean by that, I think what Alabama's offense is what Notre Dame's offense aspires to be, and maybe in a couple of years after Everett Golson has a couple more years under his belt and Brian Kelly has a couple more years with those players under his system. We'll see. But this year, the Fighting Irish are just not there yet on offense. They're just not very good. 75th in the country in points per game, 26.8 points per game. They're 48th in yards per game. But again, similar style as Alabama. They like to run the ball behind the running back tandem of Theo Riddick and Sierra Wood. Both nice players, but they would not see the field in Alabama. That's because the Crimson Tide's running back tandem, the best in the country without a doubt, Eddie Lacy, TJ Yeldon, they both went for over 1,000 yards this year, combined for 27 touchdowns. If you have not seen these guys play, I'm sure you have if you're a college football fan, do yourself a favor and watch these guys on Monday night. I mean, these guys are NFL ready, and I'm not exaggerating. I've told people a couple of times over the last few weeks, watching the SEC championship game when Alabama beat Georgia in that great game, you know, Mark Ingram and Julio Jones, two former Alabama players who are now in the NFL. Ingram, of course, a running back, Jones a wide receiver. They were standing on the sidelines, on the Alabama sidelines in street clothes, and the announcers, don't remember exactly who it was, whoever was calling that game, at one point when they showed Mark Ingram, the announcer said something to the effect of, "Boy, don't you know the Crimson Tide wish he could suit up now." And I understand what he was saying. Mark Ingram, a former Heisman Trophy winner who now makes millions playing for the New Orleans Saints. However, watching that running back tandem in that game and all year, I think that if Mark Ingram or Trent Richardson or whoever were on this team, they'd just be part of the rotation. They'd get 10 or 12 carries a game, and Eddie Lacy would get his, and TJ Yeldon would get his. I'm telling you, these guys are impressive, and they run behind the best offensive line in all of college football. That Alabama offensive line, they move people. Now, Barrett Jones, their center, has been dealing with some injuries. He is expected to go in this game. That's a good thing. They're going to need to be healthy, that offensive line, because the front seven is the strength of this Notre Dame defense. Manti Te'o gets a lot of the publicity, but he's not the only player on this front seven. Watch out for defensive tackle Lewis Nix. He's going to be key in this game because he's one of Notre Dame's primary run stoppers, and you know what the Crimson Tide are going to do. They're going to run it right at Notre Dame, or at least at some point in the game they're going to do that. You know, remember in last year's national championship game when Alabama beat LSU, they really opened up the game with A.J. McCarron throwing the ball around a little bit. And it surprised LSU, caught him off guard. And the quick passing game. And A.J. McCarron doesn't have a big arm, but he's smart, he's accurate, very similar to some other Nick Saban quarterbacks since he's been at Alabama, guys like Greg McElroy and John Parker Wilson. And Notre Dame has not been tested in the secondary this year. They just haven't. They're good in the front seven, we know that. But are they good in the back end? We don't know that. And that's been a continuing question mark about this team all year because they just haven't played a whole lot of teams who really pass the ball well. Now, they did play Oklahoma in Oklahoma, and that was the best passing team they played. The USC game at the end of the year was supposed to be the big test for this secondary, but of course, freshman Max Whittick ended up playing for USC, so that sort of fizzled. And Alabama, they rushed for more yards than they passed for per game. I mean, Alabama rushes for 225 yards per game. They only passed for 215. But I wouldn't be surprised if early Alabama established something in the passing game in this game, sort of loosen up that Notre Dame defense before they get Lacy and Yeldon really cranked up. Now, as far as the Notre Dame offense goes, they're just not as good as running back, not as good at running back. They're not as good on the offensive line, and they're not as good at quarterback. Notre Dame plays a freshman, Everett Golson, and Golson has been solid this year. I think serviceable is a good word for him. He's been relieved at times late in the game by Tommy Rees. I do think Brian Kelly has made a good move not playing Tommy Rees the whole game. We saw, and I know Notre Dame fans saw throughout last season what that can look like at times. Rees at times can look awful. So I don't like Notre Dame's quarterback situation. Don't like their offense. Now, am I selling Notre Dame short? Maybe. Did I predict Notre Dame to go 12-0 this year? Absolutely not. I thought there would be a better chance of them going 8-4 than 12-0. That being said, I have a strong lean towards Alabama in this game. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Alabama minus 9.5, I feel like, is an excellent opportunity. I just don't feel like the Irish defense is going to be able to do much at all. We mentioned the Irish offense. Did I say defense? We mentioned they're a run-based offense. Alabama, not only are they number 2 in points allowed, they're number 1 in total yards allowed and number 1 in rush yards per game allowed. The Crimson Tide only allow 79 rush yards per game, and playing in the SEC, they play a lot of teams who like to run the football. So I don't think Notre Dame's going to be able to get the run game going. Is Everett Golson going to be able to beat this Crimson Tide defense? I don't see it happening. I don't see Notre Dame scoring any more than 10 to 13 to 14 points in this game, something like that. Now, could this game turn out to be a ugly, low-scoring 14-10 type game where Notre Dame plus 9.5 turns out to be a winner? Absolutely, it could be a game like that. I just don't think it's likely. I think that Notre Dame is going to hold Alabama's offense in check, sort of, for the first half, 2 or 3 quarters. I think the Crimson Tide, like they do to so many teams, are going to wear them down by the end of the game and really pull away. I envision something like a 27-10 Alabama win. I mean, Alabama's known for being somewhat conservative on offense, but they did average 38.5 points per game this year. That's 13th in the country, so they know how to get it done. Eddie Lacy and TJ Yeldon, I'll tell you what, that Notre Dame front 7, we're going to see if they live up to their reputation. They are certainly going to be tested like they haven't been tested yet this year. Should be a great game. Manti Te'o, the great Notre Dame middle linebacker, the Heisman Trophy finalist, he leads that Irish defense. He'll be key. As I said, Lewis Nix, Irish defensive tackle, maybe their best run stopper. He'll be key. That Alabama defense, dominant throughout most of the year. They didn't play their best game against Georgia, so these teams have had over a month off each. The Tide haven't played since December 1st. Notre Dame hasn't played since November 24th. We'll see how that layoff affects these teams. Really looking forward to this game. Really have a strong lean towards Alabama minus 9.5. I wish you best of luck in whatever you decide to do, just so long as it's not betting against Alabama. Enjoy the game, folks.